Oral questions, questions orales. The honourable member for Oshawa.
Mr. Speaker, today the Prime Minister arrives at the G7 as the only leader who has driven his own country into recession. While he flies around the world in style with nearly $1 million in luxury in-flight catering, Canadians are being driven out of their homes and into food banks. 2 in 5 Canadians are struggling to put food on the table, and many families are skipping meals, living in RVs, and losing sleep over how they will pay their bills. Will the Prime Minister reverse his costly Liberal policies that have caused this crisis so Canadians can afford to live and have hope again?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Well, Mr. Speaker, every time we propose something to help the very people of which this member speaks, she rises on her leader's orders and votes against it. The groceries and essentials benefit, the Canada Child benefit, the aid for seniors, aid for dental care. And we will not apologize for the Prime Minister going to other countries, signing trade deals, bringing back billions in investment, creating jobs and opportunity for Canadians from coast to coast to coast.
The honourable member for Oshawa.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians are seeing through the illusions. These Liberals keep rolling out more programs and calling it progress. If you need more government supports just to get by, that is not success. That is an admission of failure. Right. All of the G7 countries face the same global pressures, yet only one has managed to turn these shared challenges into a recession at home. Well said. That is our Canada under this Liberal Prime Minister. Since the same global pressures are affecting everyone, why is Canada the only G7 country in recession while others have managed to avoid it?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Well, let me tell that member and her entire bench what success looks like. Success looks like creating twice as many jobs per capita as the United States. Success looks like diversifying our trade. Success looks like Contrecoeur. Success looks like high-speed rail in Ontario and Quebec that party's against. Success looks like an MOU with the province of Alberta. Success looks like economic development from one coast to another to another. We're going to keep getting success, notwithstanding the opposition of these guys.
The honourable member for Barrie South Innisfil.
Well, if you talk to anyone on the street or businesses suffering from 11 years of failed Liberal policies, they'll tell you that Canada is in recession, no matter how the Liberals or the media try to spin it, and things are not getting any better. While families, seniors and young people are anxious about their finances and their futures, the worst of all scenarios have crept into the minds of Canadian business: doubt and uncertainty. The Liberal Prime Minister has the distinction of walking into the G7 meetings as the only leader to push their country into recession. Will he rethink his costly policies that have caused this recession?
The Honourable Minister of Energy and Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, while the opposition talks Canada down, what we're doing is we're building. We're building $8 billion in Goose Bay. We're building new wind farms in Nova Scotia. We're building new nuclear in Ontario. We're building new pipelines in British Columbia and Alberta. All they do is talk us down. We're building, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Barrie South Innisfil.
Well, Canada's decline didn't start last April. It was catalyzed 6 years ago when the current Prime Minister was Trudeau's economic advisor. The Prime Minister's fingerprints are over the failed policies that have caused Canada to be the only G7 country in recession. While well-connected Liberals and corporate buddies are doing well, the crumbs they feed to families, seniors and young people can't mask the fact that 60% of Canadians feel anxious about their finances, 40% are losing sleep, 38% have food insecurity, and 2.2 million Canadians visited food banks last year. Does that sound like everything is working well?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I know they want to go back 6 years ago and refight an election 6 years ago. Unfortunately, it's today. Good for Canada. Because what we hear is the Premier of Alberta says they've never been as optimistic about this country. We hear from all the premiers. They want to build with this government. Instead of talking us down, why don't they get on board and help build this country?
The honourable member for Mégantic-Lorable-Aubinière. The Liberal Prime Minister will attend the G7 today as the only leader to have plunged his own country into a recession. Mr. Speaker, full-time workers are living in trailers because they can no longer afford housing. According to the United Way, 60% of Canadians feel anxious about their finances and 38% have food insecurity. Yet, this Liberal Prime Minister finds a way to spend over $1 million of their money on luxury meals. Will this Liberal Prime Minister finally end his inflationary spending, bureaucracy, and policies that caused this cost of living crisis in Canada? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With respect to the economy, the forecast is that Canada will have the second strongest growth in the G7. Salaries are exceeding in inflation, but on this side of the House, Mr. Speaker, we want to build big projects, create jobs and wealth in our country. But now we see the Conservatives coming in every day with their hands on their hearts, even though they're voting against measures that will help millions of Canadians, such as the grocery benefit, dental care, child care. Mr. Speaker, I would ask them to take a step back and start walking the talk. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, they want to applaud them for a Band-Aid they put on a cut that they created. That's the problem. I have a message for this Liberal Prime Minister who's at the G7. Also, for this minister as well. Rogerio Rigor, a Quebec father holding down 2 jobs, told La Presse, I was just trying to survive. He had to make a consumer proposal. And that's this Liberal minister's true economic record. Instead of spending nearly $1 million on luxury meals during his trips, the Prime Minister needs to give up his smoked salmon because Rogerio, for his part, has sacrificed everything to try to survive this Liberal inflation. The Honourable Minister, Mr. Speaker, I don't have their names, but there are over 13,000 families that benefit from the CCB in his riding, and he voted against this. I don't have their names, but we're talking about 13,500 families that are benefiting from it. There are over 39,000 in his riding that receive dental care, and he voted against it. I don't have the names of these people, but we're talking about tens of thousands of his constituents that benefit from this new grocery benefit. So I would ask them to stop voting to help these people. The Honourable Member for Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister makes fancy speeches at Davos where he called for a united front amongst middle powers, and he declared on Saturday that the G7 that the threads of a new world order could be woven. The problem is that it's just fine words. In real life, the Prime Minister is distancing himself from Europe by scrapping the digital services tax. He's distancing himself from the EU by scrapping royalties for online broadcasters, and he's leaving the climate fight to Europeans so he can build pipelines for the benefit of American oil. And why is this Prime Minister spending his time abandoning middle powers to please Donald Trump, the Honourable Government House Leader? Mr. Speaker, there's another European phenomenon. It's high-speed train. It is in almost all of Europe, and now even the Kingdom of Morocco has high-speed rail. So we're talking about high technology that is green, and it's a revolution and infrastructure that will allow millions of Quebecers and Canadians to travel every year. It'll change the system. Why is the Bloc not changing its opinion on high-speed rail? The Honourable Member for Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, we haven't even talked about the pipeline, the Keystone XL pipeline, which would please the U.S. but harm all countries fighting climate change. But we haven't even mentioned Bill C-30, which allows for the reauthorization of banned pesticides. And this will please American manufacturers of Monsanto projects because it'll harm trade with Europe and with stricter standards. But the Prime Minister says a lot of things, but his actions are driving him away from his European allies and bringing him closer to Mr. Trump. He writes beautiful speeches, but why is he doing the exact opposite of what he says? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, why is the Bloc fighting against Quebec businesses and small businesses and people who are working to build this big infrastructure? A high-speed rail system that will help people in Louisville and people in Old Montreal, companies in Gatineau, advertising in Quebec. This is a revolution, Mr. Speaker. We're talking about 51,000 jobs that are being created and 35 billion in GDP. It's a revolution for transit. And how come this member is turning his back on it? The honourable member for Drummond. We'll give them another chance. The Prime Minister keeps saying that we have to join forces with middle powers against the U.S., but yet he's turning his back on the 17 European countries and Australia, which are imposing taxes on digital services. He's abandoning the EU, which imposes fees on online streaming giants like Netflix. The fight for cultural diversity will be led and perhaps won by middle powers, but Canada's pulling away, weakening global consensus and threatening the future of Quebec culture. Is it not just a high price to pay to please Donald Trump? Are we selling our souls? The Honourable Minister of Government Transformation. Mr. Speaker, talking about threats to Quebec culture. Well, when it's time to vote on our budget, they don't even talk about culture in Quebec. And in the last budget, the Bloc didn't vote for our budget, and I find it's hard to hear them talking about this, about threatening culture. But now they talked about getting closer to Europe. No one except for the Bloc doesn't think that Canada is getting very close to Europe. The honourable member.
Mr. Speaker, in just 14 trips, the Prime Minister has spent nearly $1 million on in-flight catering at taxpayers' expense. Meanwhile, 2 in 5 Canadians struggle to put food on the table, and a record 2.2 million Canadians relied on the food bank in a single month. Liberal inflationary spending, red tape, and anti-development policies are driving up costs and weakening our economy. And it is always Canadians who are left paying for Liberal waste. So, Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister reverse his costly policies that caused this crisis so Canadians can afford to live again?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Rural Development.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm uncertain where that member has been over the last number of years, but I want to give them one good example of how this government stood up for Saskatchewan when 14 of them sat on their hands for 10 long years, Mr. Speaker. I am talking to the Saskatchewan Conservative MP caucus. Why didn't you defend this canola deal? Why didn't you stand up?
No, I don't. I'm not involved in the canola deal. It will be just again a reminder to go through the chair. The member may continue.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. My question is, why didn't they stand up for Saskatchewan and the canola deal that brought billions to the Saskatchewan producers? Again, they sat on their hands doing nothing.
The honourable member for Battleford, Lloydminster, Meadow Lake.
Well, Mr. Speaker, food affordability is so terrible that there is scurvy in that member's riding. And we can't forget that this Prime Minister is the one who said affordability is the best that it's been in over a decade. But you know what? He's showing up at the G7 as the only leader who has caused a recession in his own country. That is his Liberal government's record. Inflationary spending, red tape, and anti-development policies are driving up costs. It's not global factors. It is the Liberal choices that Canadians can't afford. When will this government stop making life more expensive for Canadians?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Rural Development.
Mr. Speaker, it would be really nice if I saw one Conservative visit Northern Saskatchewan to deal with the issues that we are struggling with, Mr. Speaker. Now, I would point out every time we have an opportunity to help my riding and many other ridings across this country, whether it's food and essential benefit, the $10 a day daycare, Mr. Speaker, the food program for the schools, every single time we make initiatives, they vote against it, Mr. Speaker. So we'll take no lessons on helping any region in Saskatchewan that feels that they're underserved. We will represent all of Canadians and stand up for them forever, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Montmorency Charlevoix. Mr. Speaker, it's unfortunate, it's not nice, but we're in a recession and Canadians feel it. Some families spend over 120% of their income on food and housing alone. some people even have to borrow to eat. And the reality is that these Liberal programs aren't working, and that more Liberals are in charge, the more things cost. Today, the Prime Minister is going to the G7 as the only person who has plunged their own country into a recession. He likes to make inspiring and fancy speeches abroad, but can he not admit that families have to pay the price? Thank you very much. On last June 9th, Canadians received their first payment for the grocery and essentials benefit. We're talking about millions of Canadians who received assistance to buy groceries. And we're very proud to help Canadians with this challenge. And Canadians are brave, and they're going to work with us to rebuild our economy, which is solid and responsible. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Montmorency-Charlevoix. Well, in Quebec, average annual income is $67,000, and I received a picture of this famous grocery benefit. For a Quebec worker that earns $67,000 a year, he received $11.98. $11.98 to help him pay for groceries. Families can no longer afford groceries, rent, and gas, and the Liberals have plunged this country into a recession. Can this Prime Minister take advantage of his time with the G7 to take advice from all the other countries that are not in a recession? I think it could help. The Honourable Secretary of State. Mr. Speaker, the question from my colleague allows me to talk about the announcement we made last week. We're talking about $1 billion we're investing in food infrastructure to build food markets and more accessible hubs for Canadians. We are also going to enhance competitiveness. We're going to do this because it's important, and yes, Canadians need ongoing support. We have done this, and they're behind us because they also want us to rebuild our country in an autonomous and responsible fashion. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Lethbridge.
Today, the Prime Minister arrives at the G7 as the one and only leader who has led his country into a recession. Now, this is what that looks like. 2 in 5 Canadians struggle to be able to afford to feed themselves. Full-time workers are living in RVs or at Tim Hortons, and food bank use has hit an all-time high. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister spends $1 million on luxury in-flight catering that includes things like Normandy buttercups and fine wines and braised beef. So my question is very simple. When will the Prime Minister acknowledge the reality that so many Canadians face and reverse his policy so that they can afford to live again?
The Honourable Minister of Jobs and Families.
Well, Mr. Speaker, that Member of Parliament has risen before to ask questions like this, but I would ask her a question, and that question is, why does she keep voting against the very people in Alberta that are asking for a hand up? In fact, the National School Food Program in Alberta feeds 58,000 children, Mr. Speaker, and parents are saving up to $13,700 a year per child. All things that member has voted against.
The Honourable Member for Lethbridge.
I think what that member meant to highlight was the fact that under this government, child poverty rates have increased year after year after year for the last 3. And that dramatically impacts the people of my riding in Lethbridge, Alberta. Dramatically. And it means that seniors in this country are living at Tim Hortons, and it means that full-time workers are living out of their IVs. So why does this government turn a blind eye to the reality of Canadians while it's living high on the horse? Why doesn't it reverse its policy so that Canadians can finally afford to live again?
The Honourable Minister for Jobs and Families.
Mr. Speaker, if you check Hansard, you'll find that member is on record saying that parents don't want help. And in fact, what I hear from Canadians, including Albertans, who write to me as the Minister of Jobs and Families, is let's stand up for each other. Let's make sure not one kid goes hungry, no matter if their parent is out of work, no matter if their family is struggling, because circumstances are unfortunate for some families, but what's most Canadian is the value of helping each other.
The Honourable Member for Nanaimo-Ladysmith.
I'll remind that member that today the Prime Minister is at the G7 as the only leader in the G20 who has caused a recession in his own country, technical or otherwise. He says the data can be uneven. What is not uneven is the pain, Mr. Speaker. Food bank use is at record levels while 2 in 5 struggle to eat. And full-time workers live in people's driveways because a paycheck no longer buys a home. All while the Prime Minister's in-flight catering bill for just 14 trips could feed a family for 55 years. When will this Prime Minister reverse his costly policies and make good on his announcements so Canadians can afford to live again?
Again, before we go to the answer, I just want to remind members that even if certain things are in the news, we should not mention the presence or absence of members. The Honourable Minister of Veterans Affairs.
Here.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is attending the G7 today, and he's attending
I'm trying very hard to apply the rules, but members are making it very difficult. We don't need to talk about location. The Honourable Minister, please.
Speaker, Canada is represented at the G7 today as a country that has hit its NATO 2% target this year, as a country that has attracted foreign direct investment at twice the rate of our nearest G7 countries. And as someone who as a country that has secured 20 economic and defense agreements over 4 continents, British Columbians like to see this growth. This is Canada.
The Honourable Member for Laurentides-Labelle. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Natural Resources warned on Thursday that wildfires will intensify throughout the summer as hot temperatures are expected. And in fact, 300 mayors have called on the federal government to abandon its plans for new pipelines. And their statement has said that communities will be reduced to ashes this summer while we continue to rely more and more on the expansion of fossil fuels. Mr. Speaker, as we enter another wildfire season, will the Liberals finally put an end to their obsession with oil? The Honourable Minister of the Environment. Mr. Speaker, I'll repeat once again that our government continues to fight against climate change, and we are also putting in the work. We have strengthened methane regulations, and we are a global leader in this respect. People are looking at us and asking us to do better, and when we talk about what we're doing with respect to climate change and international financing, once again, we are a leader. And every time we make this change and do this work, the Bloc doesn't support us. If they want to do the work, they should help us with electricity. The Honourable Member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. Mr. Speaker, the Department of Natural Resources announced on Thursday that we're facing another difficult summer in terms of wildfires. Yet you wouldn't know it if you listened to the minister, because 2 days earlier he was in Calgary at a conference of energy producers saying that the oil sands were Canada's greatest industrial achievement. He was touting the acceleration of oil and gas exports at the very moment his own department was warning that our regions are going to burn. According to the Liberals, should the safety of forested regions not take precedence over oil sand profits? The Honourable Secretary of State to Nature. Climate change is a reality that we're not ignoring, and we are working on it. We have a strategy for nature, and we're going to be able to protect 30% of our land and oceans. It's part of our fight against climate change. My climate mentioned the methane regulations and everything we're going to do for renewable energy. It will help us to fight against climate change, and that will allow us to advance and become economically autonomous.
Mr. Speaker, community organizations are warning that the rushed changes to the New Horizon for Seniors program are putting hundreds of projects at risk. Many volunteers are seniors who already struggle with technology. With only weeks to register for a CRA business number and navigate a complex online portal, these changes are overwhelming, and many fear they will be disqualified. Will the Liberals fix these unnecessary barriers, or will they have to create another program to help seniors apply for a current one?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, we are incredibly proud of this program. Last year alone, it supported over 2,600 projects right across Canada. helping seniors stay active and engaged and fight isolation. This year, we're increasing the value of the grants and we're making some changes to strengthen the integrity of the program. Service Canada is there to assist with any organizations with questions on how to apply, and we're going to make sure that this program remains accessible for seniors and organizations and meets the standards of integrity that Canadians expect.
Member for King Vaughan.
Mr. Speaker, the Secretary of State claims that registering for a CRA business number and using the online portal is simple, but senior organizations are telling a different story. In my community of King Vaughan, where 18 senior groups have been supporting over 6,000 senior volunteers, have been frantically calling my office scared of missing out on critical funding. These changes will leave the most vulnerable organization behind. Why are the Liberals trying to bury seniors in even more red tape?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the
Mr. Speaker,
Secretary of State for Seniors.
Mr. Speaker, quite the opposite. We've worked hand in hand with organizations to ensure that these changes to this program are welcomed. We know that this program delivers important services for seniors in every single riding of every member in this House. That is something that we are going to continue, and we will take no lessons from the Conservatives in our support for seniors when they continue to vote against programs like the dental care plan and the groceries and essentials benefit that benefits single seniors right across the country.
The Honourable Member for Bellechasse, Lizette-Chemin-Lévis. Mr. Speaker, as we mark today World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, the Liberal government itself is throwing a wrench into the works for the organizations that support seniors. Under the new rules of the New Horizons program, volunteer groups must obtain a business number from the CRA, a process that can take several months, in addition to navigating an online application system. Organizations want to serve seniors and not battle Ottawa's bureaucracy, Mr. Speaker. Will this government back down on these bureaucratic reforms? And yes, we know who these people are in our ridings. The Honourable Secretary of State for Children and Youth. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are going to ensure that this New Horizons program for seniors reaches out to organizations to improve the quality of life for seniors. And these changes are important so that this program remains accessible while still respecting integrity as Canadians expect. We are working with the CRA as well as the department to help these organizations who need support managing this new business number. Applications will be ready as of July 14th. And the department is ready to help all those who need assistance.
The Honourable Member for Bellechasse, Lizette-Chemin-Lévis. Mr. Speaker, they're completely disconnected, but on another subject. The President of the Treasury Board was unable to answer a simple question from my colleague last week. This embarrassed their government and angered their fellow Liberal MPs. They had the whole weekend to get their bearings and find the right page in their briefing notes. Do they consider that they still have the Prime Minister's confidence? Just a couple of seconds to consult their notes for an answer.
President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. President, I don't know what the question was, but as the President of the Treasury Board, he talked about...
Don't want an answer. Okay, we're going to start over. The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My honourable colleague made a statement, but there was no question in that statement. As the President of the Treasury Board, I strongly support the government's effort to improve and modernize access to information process. Access to information is a fundamental part of ensuring transparency and accountability to Canadians. That is why last March, we launched a review of the Access to Information Act. We provided library and archives.
No. If one is going to ask a question, wait. Okay, the minister may take a few seconds to finish here.
Thank you, Speaker. We provided Library and Archive Canada with a permanent funding increase of approximately $20 million per year to support its access to information system.
The honourable member for Cloverdale Langley City.
He's better than all of you, right?
Mr. Speaker, La Presse reports that Liberal MPs say the President of the Treasury Board is not very present, not very diligent, and struggling to master his files. Last week, Canadians watched him stand in this House unable to answer a very basic question about his own department. If the Prime Minister demands confidence from his ministers, does he still have confidence in the President of the Treasury Board? Yes or no?
The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, Canada's new government believes in transparency, accountability, and fairness. As the President of the Treasury Board, I have been meeting with the government agents, including the Information Commissioner. We have launched consultation to modernize the access to information system. I thank all the government agents, including the Information Commissioner, for their work to hold the government to account. Merci, Mr. Le Président.
The honourable member for Hamilton West, Ancaster Dundas.
Canada led the invention of modern artificial intelligence, and now AI is used by millions of Canadians every day.
We'll try again. We'll try until we get this. The honourable member for Hamilton West, Ancaster Dundas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Canada led the invention of modern artificial intelligence, and now AI is used by millions of Canadians every day. Canadians want AI to strengthen our economy, to enhance job opportunities, to deliver new research and innovation, and to protect our communities and our national sovereignty, and to always prioritize people. Can the Minister of Artificial Intelligence and Digital Innovation update this House on Canada's new AI strategy? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister of Artificial Intelligence and Digital Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, I'd really like to thank the member from Hamilton West, Ancaster Dundas, for his incredible advocacy on behalf of his community. Mr. Speaker, our new national AI strategy, AI for All, is building trust, creating opportunity, and keeping sovereign control. We are creating a national AI literacy program so all Canadians can build a literate and educated workforce. We're creating 90,000 job placements for young Canadians so they can get the job experience they need. And we're investing in Canadian innovators, small and medium-sized businesses, to keep the jobs, the innovation, and the business.
The honourable member for York-Durham.
Mr. Speaker, as the G7 gets underway, the Prime Minister remains the only leader of a G7 or G20 economy that's in recession. Now, the Prime Minister should travel, but Canadians expect results for that. Now, when he was back home in Ireland this weekend, investment was actually leaving Canada, because on Saturday, OpenText, Waterloo-based AI company, announced a $140 million investment in Ireland. That's 400 new jobs for Ireland. Ireland has lower taxes, less regulation, and a better business environment. So why did this investment not get made in Canada?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Financial Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, you can't understand the economy if you've never worked a day in it like that Conservative leader. Maybe he should actually listen to actual economists in Canada, like BMO's chief economist that said adding 88,000 jobs should silence the critics. What about RBC's Francis Donald, that said that it's a wrong diagnosis, neither accurate or helpful? C.D. Howe panned his thoughts on the economy. Mr. Speaker, I could go on and on. On this side of the House, we're going to build Canada strong. He can continue with empty parking lot press conferences, props, and slogans. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for York Durham.
This government's props and slogans are cold comfort to the young generation of next Canadians who are feeling their failures most acutely. The United Way's report last week confirmed that. Food insecurity concerns highest among young Canadians. Income declines most acute among young Canadians. Fully 91% of the next generation feel personal financial anxiety. Add on top of that the highest unemployment rate in 35 years. So when will this government stop selling out the next generation?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Industry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There are some very promising signs in the Canadian economy, especially in Ontario and especially for youth.
Hear, hear.
The Ontario unemployment rate is now the lowest in 2.5 years. The Toronto unemployment rate is the lowest since November 2023. Full-time jobs are up 154,000, 99,000 of which were youth. There are some very promising signs of this economy, and we have investment both going to Canada and in...
Vernon has changed seats. I can hear him in a different spot now. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary may continue. Pardon?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have very promising results with incoming investment, the highest investment in over 18 years in foreign direct investment into Canada. And it's very good to have very strong Canadian companies that are both exporting their products and finding trading opportunities elsewhere. So I think we should celebrate and talk up these strong Canadian technology companies instead of running them down. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Richmond Hill South.
The Liberal Prime Minister is the only G7 leader and the only G20 leader who has delivered a recession in his own country. A United Way survey found 60% of Canadians are anxious about their finances. 38% face food insecurity and 40% are losing sleep over how to stretch their paycheck. Meanwhile, this Liberal Prime Minister's luxury in-flight catering bill has reached nearly $1 million over 14 trips, including $175,000 for food on a single trip, enough to feed a family for 55 years. Will this Prime Minister reverse his costly Liberal policies that put Canada into a recession so Canadians can afford to live again?
The Honourable Minister for Artificial Intelligence and Digital Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, instead of tearing down this country, which they do, or counting airline miles, they should help build it up. The May jobs report showed that Canada created 88,000 new net jobs. Do they mention that? No. Our trade surplus is up 55%. Do they mention it? No. Our total exports are at a record high. Do they mention it? No. When they have a food and groceries essentials to help Canadians, do they vote for it? No. Why don't they get on board and help build up Canada?
Yeah! The Honourable Member for Richmond Hill South.
Conservatives aren't tearing down Canadians. It's Liberals who are keeping down Canadians. Those Liberal talking points will not help the full-time workers living in RVs and trailers because they cannot afford homes, or the families spending 120% of their income on food and rent alone, or the 22% of Canadians who have personally experienced poverty, or the 1 in 5 food insecure households. Every dollar wasted on Liberal luxury is a dollar not used to lower taxes, build homes, improve safety, or help Canadians make ends meet. Will this Liberal Prime Minister end the waste, cut the bureaucracy, and reverse the Liberal policies that caused this recession?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, when we propose programs like dental care or the groceries and essentials benefit, anything that could help vulnerable Canadians, these Conservatives are against. When our closest ally launches an unjustified trade war, what do Conservatives do? They say we're having a hissy fit. When the Prime Minister goes and brings back tens of billions of dollars of jobs and investment to this country and proposes major projects, what do the Conservatives do? They vote against that. What, for the love of all that is good, are the Conservatives for?
The Honourable Member for Brandon Souris.
Mr. Speaker, despite leading Canada into a recession, this Prime Minister continues living in luxury, racking up $1 million in in-flight catering alone. Meanwhile, more and more Manitoba families are struggling just to put food on the table. Last week, Harvest Manitoba shared their Manitoba Poverty Report Card, which says it all, giving this government an F in their poverty rating, and advised that of the record-setting 60,000 Manitobans who visit food banks monthly, 30% are employed full-time. What? If full-time workers can't even afford food, these gimmicks and rebates aren't going to cut it. When is this government going to take serious action to reduce food prices in this country?
Yeah, well said.
The Honourable Minister for Northern and Arctic Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I represent some of the poorest communities in this country, so when this member opposite tries to lecture me on affordability, I have to ask, why does he vote against every single measure that is supporting Manitobans, including affordable childcare, grocery rebate, automatic tax filing, cutting taxes at the pump? He needs to get on side and start voting and working for Manitobans.
Member for Elgin, St. Thomas, London South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We know how bad inflation has gotten in Canada. We know grocery prices are through the roof, fuel prices are skyrocketing, and even the cars that Canadians need to fuel up are becoming more and more unaffordable for the middle class. The price of a used car has doubled in the last 7 years in this country, and the government is still putting the federal sales tax on them each and every time they're sold, sometimes collecting double, triple, or quadruple revenue off the backs of Canadians. But Conservatives come armed with solutions. We have a bill, C-285, that will take the GST off of used cars and save Canadians thousands. Will they support it?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Financial Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, from day one, we've been focused on delivering affordability measures for Canadians. Let's talk about the removal of the GST for first-time homebuyers. Let's talk about the pause on the federal excise tax. That is 10 cents. Combine that with the removal of the carbon tax, that's 28 cents savings per liter. Mr. Speaker, we just launched the Groceries and Essentials benefit. We just announced the 50% payment a week and a half ago. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we'll continue to focus on affordability, no focus on rhetoric and bluster. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Niagara South.
Well, Mr. Speaker, there's no rhetoric or bluster here as the minister does his fancy dance over there. Look, when we look at the used cars prices, the prices of used cars have more than doubled over the last several years as a result of this government's inflationary policies. Taxing a vehicle twice is wrong. We on this side believe that cars are not a luxury, and for many people, it's a lifeline. On this side of the House, we will zero rate used vehicles under the Excise Tax Act. Will the Liberals stop profiting off of inflation and remove GST from the sale of used cars in this country?
The Honourable Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, now I can see them opposite. Mr. Speaker, I've had the privilege of running private business actually in the economy, not like that Conservative leader. And when an economy or a business is faced with adversity, you have two choices. You can wave your hands around, blame everybody else, and offer nothing constructive, or you can actually lead. You can rebuild, you can restructure, you can build new trade relationships. On this side of the House, Mr. Speaker, that's what our Prime Minister, that's what our International Trade Minister is doing. We're going to build Canada strong. They continue with the rhetoric. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint-Laurent, Acawen-Raka. Mr. Speaker, over the last 7 years, used car prices have doubled. It's now $36,000 on average. $36,000 is a lot, especially for countries for people that need their car to work. We believe that a tax should only apply once, but unfortunately, GST is still applied to used cars. We want to abolish GST on used cars. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals already abolished the carbon tax like we wanted. Will they do so for used cars? The Honourable Minister. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and that allows me to remind everyone that we suspended the excise tax on fuel for the summer, which offers reprieve for consumers, increases Canadians' purchasing power. We're not stopping there, and I invite my colleague, because I know, well, he claims that affordability is important. I invite him to support us for the groceries benefit and for tax cuts for 22 million people, etc.
Member for Elgin, St. Thomas, London South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If we took the tax off all used goods, their talking points would be tax-free. We asked the question 4 times and got 0 answers. We came with a solution, a conservative bill to save Canadians thousands of dollars by taking the GST off used cars. Cars that are taxed 2, 3, even 4 times, as many times as the Liberals avoided answering the question. It's a very simple one. In my part of the country and for MPs across this House, driving is not a luxury but a necessity. So will the Liberals join us and take the GST off used cars?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister.
Speaker, I will give the Conservative credit that they actually are now talking about actual measures that could support affordability, but I would ask them where they've been for the last number of months and years. I've been a member of Parliament for 7 years in this House, and it wouldn't matter if it's the Canada Child Benefit. It wouldn't matter if it's national childcare. It wouldn't matter if it's the National School Food Program. Whether or not it's the tax measures we put in place, consistently they vote against these measures. So we appreciate that now they're finally talking about affordability, but we would ask them to actually support the measures that this government consistently puts in front to help support Canadians across the board. Good that they're now talking about. Why don't they get on board with some of the initiatives that we've put on board for years now, Mr. Speaker?
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Riverbend.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we're facing a men's mental health crisis. Too many men and boys face mental health challenges, and too many simply won't ask for help. Last week, we once again hosted an annual Father's Day on the Hill event with Movember, where Montreal Canadiens great Guy Carbonneau shared his story and talked about the recent loss of his friend and teammate Claude Lemieux. As we mark Men's Health Month in June, can the Minister of Health provide an update on the much-anticipated Men and Boys Health Strategy?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Minister for Health.
Speaker, I want to thank my colleague from Edmonton Riverbend for his tireless leadership on this issue. I am pleased to report that thanks to his help and the help of groups like Movember, more than 5,000 people shared their thoughts and ideas during our consultation for Canada's first ever Men and Boys Health Strategy. We heard many great ideas about how to create more opportunities for boys and men. I look forward to releasing the strategy in the coming months. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Foothills.
Foothills families are shaken. A local man was charged with more than 500,000 pieces of child exploitation material, and he was released. 10-year-old Grace asked me, how can this man not be in jail? I do not feel safe playing outside with my friends. That isn't right. Okotoks families want to know why a man charged with such a heinous crime was released into the community. Conservatives offered a solution, jail not bail for serious offences, but the Liberals rejected it. When will the Liberals fix the bail system that they broke so the Okotoks families can feel safe again?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, I thank my honourable colleague for raising this question on the floor of the House of Commons. These kinds of heinous behaviours have no place in Canada, and the Government of Canada has an opportunity to do something about it. I'm pleased to share that we expect this week we're going to have changes to Canada's Criminals Code. This includes changes that would make it impossible for conditional sentencing orders to be tied to charges impacting crimes like sexual crimes against children. In addition, Mr. Speaker, last week this House voted on the Protecting Victims Act, which puts in place a number of measures designed specifically to combat child sexual exploitation and child sexual exploitation and abuse material. My hope is that these measures will become law expeditiously so communities benefit from this protection.
The Honourable Member for Brantford Brant South, Six Nations.
The criminal charge in the Lambton College shooting, which left one person dead, is not surprisingly out on bail. Only under these weak-on-crime Liberals could a man charged with murder and attempted murder be back on the streets before justice is served. These Liberals have turned our justice system into a joke, a revolving door for violent offenders. Victims get fear, criminals get another chance. How many more accused killers do these Liberals intend to release before they finally admit that their weak-on-crime laws are a complete and catastrophic failure?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, the political motivation behind the member's question is obvious based on the way he's phrased it. But if he would like some validation that the Bail and Sentencing Reform Act that we have put forward in this House is supported by those who work on the front lines, I would invite him to talk to the head of the Canadian Association of the Chiefs of Police. I would invite him to talk to the head of the Ontario Police Service, to the Ontario Police Association. Mr. Speaker, the legislation we put forward has been informed by leaders in the police movement. It has been informed by provinces and premiers demanding the expeditious adoption of the Bail and Sentencing Reform Act. It has been informed by engagement with cities. We will do everything we can to listen to those expert voices to keep Canadians safe.
The honourable member for Brantford, Brant South, Six Nations.
That minister and this government has had 11 years to get this right. Last week, Canada suffered a tragic loss when Officer Mark Pinizzotto was shot and killed in the line of duty. It has now been revealed that the man responsible for the horrific crime was already out on probation. And then we learned that the U.S. consulate shooter was on bail. Thugs already before the courts, known to police, are prohibited from possessing firearms, are now back on the streets. This should have never happened, Mr. Speaker. How many more tragedies will it take before these Liberals stop treating bail conditions like a joke and start keeping repeat violent offenders behind bars?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, as I've indicated before, we are deeply heartbroken that the Toronto Police Constable Mark Pinizzotto, as well as Ontario Police Service Constable Taryn Bali, were killed in the line of duty last week. We as a government have been taking decisive action, Mr. Speaker, including strengthening bail and sentencing bills that we expect to go through Parliament just this week. We need to work in collaboration to ensure the safety and security of all those who serve on the front lines, Mr. Speaker. We are taking those actions. We invite the party opposite to join us in order to strengthen these systems.
The Honourable Member for Meadow-West Carristigouche. Mr. Speaker, across New Brunswick and Canada, young people are ready to work, to learn new skills and contribute to their community. For many of them, all they need is an opportunity. The Canada Summers Job Programme meets this need every year by connecting thousands of young people each year with local businesses. Can the Minister tell us how our government is strengthening this programme so that more young people can work and get ahead this summer? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Jobs and families.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague for standing up for young people across New Brunswick and Canada. We know that when young people succeed, our communities succeed. That is the reason for which we are investing in the Canada Summer Jobs Programme, creating 100,000 jobs this year, including more than 12,300 in Atlantic Canada. These jobs enable young people to gain skills and continue to contribute to their community.
The Honourable Member for Caribou Prince George.
$38 million, 1,000 deliberately set fires in just 4 years, businesses closing and leaving town. That is the true devastating cost of Liberal catch and release and mental health policies in the city of Prince George. Prolific offenders are arrested and released the very same day. Homelessness, addiction, and crime have turned our communities into war zones. That is the reality, and that is this Liberal government's legacy. Members of the Prince George City Council are here in Ottawa today. Will the Prime Minister accept their invite to come to Prince George and tell our business owners directly to their face why he believes they should give his catch and release policies another chance?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Combating Crime. Great job.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think the members of the Business Council should also be informed that the Conservative Party of Canada did nothing to assist on our bail and sentencing reform bill. And if anything, they've impeded our ability to progress changes to the Criminal Code of Canada, making sentences harder, making sure that we give police the tools that they need in C-22. They've been blocking it for months now, Mr. Speaker, and they need to help law enforcement so that they can arrest and charge criminals.
The Honourable Member for Winnipeg Centre.
Mr. Speaker, it's been 1 year since the Liberals fast-tracked Bill C-5, gutting environmental protections and Indigenous rights. But now with Bill S-2 to eliminate sexism and racism from the Indian Act, they suddenly hide behind the need to consult. Mr. Speaker, First Nations everywhere have told this government there's no need to consult on ending sexism and racism. So will the minister end the spin cycle, stop the excuses, and pass Bill S-2 before the summer adjournment?
The Honourable Minister of Indigenous Services.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Speaker, the process of enfranchisement unjustly strips thousands of First Nations individuals from their status. And while the practice was ended 35 years ago, the harmful legacy still remains. That member knows that this bill is before study at the committee. That member knows that there are witnesses, and we want to respect those First Nations witnesses' rights to come and defend and speak for themselves and their communities. I'm willing to work with that First Nation to respect those First Nations' rights. I'm willing to work with that member to respect those First Nations' rights, because this is what we're committed to doing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.